Shock to the System is the series premiere of Static Shock. It first aired on September 23rd.
Shock to the System.
2000 in a warehouse situated somewhere in Dakota, a masked teenager thwarts an electronics robbery, wielding a variety of electrical powers and flying around on a manhole cover. Magnetically removing their metal weapons, he subdues them in short order, sticks them to the ceiling by their coats, and finally creates a sign suspended in midair, directing the police, just arriving on the scene, to the building. Watching his handiwork, he thinks back to 2 days ago, when in his own words, he was the last person anyone would call hero material.
Piece of cake with frosting and sprinkles. My first bad guy beatdown and I hardly broke a sweat.
Virgil Hawkins, an ordinary kid living in a black neighborhood, heads from home, with his sister Sharon and father Robert, to high school, with one thing in mind, to ask Frida Gorin to homecoming, with some coaching from his best friend, Richie.
Big. I'm taking my friendship with Frida to another level. What's this, an egg smoothie?
Give him a try.
Tonight? You mean a real day?
As he works his way around to the subject, though, he runs afoul of Francis F. Stop Stone and nearly receives a beating, but is saved thanks to the intervention of another of his friends, Wade. Coming home from school, though, Virgil runs into Francis again, flanked by his friends, and soon finds himself cornered in the back of an alley. There, he is held back as Francis pounds him mercilessly, only stopping when Wade happens by again. Warned by their lookout, the bullies make a break for it while Wade finds his beaten friend and orders him to meet him under the bridge in half an hour, not listening to his protests that's when he has to meet his dad. 30 minutes later, still not too sure about it, Virgil meets Wade, alongside the rest of his crew, and is stunned when they ask him to join them.
Wade and his homie headed our way.
Wade tells him he won't always be around to save him from Francis, but that joining them will keep him safe. Virgil, well aware of the dangers of joining a gang and, indeed, his father's stance on the subject, is unsure. A while later, he comes home, writing off his injuries on the very flimsy excuse of football injuries before he goes to his room. Upstairs, he receives a call from Richie, who has already heard about his apparently joining Wade. He protests that he just gave a sort of non-committal nod, as has most of the neighborhood. Richie himself can't believe it, as Virgil's own mother died from gang fire. Virgil, realizing how bad the situation is, begins trying to think of a way out when Wade calls on another line, telling him to meet at the dock now, and hangs up. He arrives at the dock, finding Wade and the rest of his gang preparing for a huge throwdown with Francis' gang, as well as a great deal of large metal canisters. When he is handed a gun, Virgil realizes exactly how bad the situation is, and throwing it into the water, tries to back out. Unfortunately, he finds himself face to face with Francis himself. Just then, police helicopters arrive, casting a searchlight on everyone and breaking up the fight. Everybody scatters, ignoring orders to stay where they are, until finally, a canister of tear gas is fired down right next to one of the canisters, causing an explosion and the release of a cloud of purple gas. Everybody who breathes it in begins coughing, then exhibiting strange physical reactions. One's face begins to stretch, as another's eyes begin glowing, while police move in with gas masks on. Virgil himself crawls over a fence, on the edge of the spreading cloud, and falls over the side.
He narrowly gets it off of himself, and goes to the bathroom to shave when the razor begins buzzing as soon as he approaches it, even though it's not even plugged in. He drops it, stunned, and realizes that he himself is somehow giving off electricity. Excited, he calls Richie, and tells him to meet him at the junkyard, where Virgil is already showing an impressive control over his abilities. He glides around on the hood of a car, showing off. Richie watches and concludes that he could be a superhero, just as Virgil crashes into a pile of cars. Back at Virgil's house, they go through a series of potential costumes, before finally settling the one he will go on to use in the fight at the warehouse. Back at the warehouse, Virgil lets the burglars drop from the ceiling to the floor, allowing the police to arrest them. A moment later, he notices that among the electronics in the warehouse are the new lab computers for his own school. Meanwhile, as the students work on setting up the homecoming, Richie tries to cover for his friend until Virgil arrives, in costume, personally delivering the computers and introducing himself as Static. "I put a shock to your system." He then proceeds to single-handedly put up most of the decorations, turn the lights on, and blow an electric heart in Frida's direction, causing her hair to stand on end, as he wonders why it's never this easy for Virgil. Among them is Francis, literally burning up, until he breaks free of his bed restraints, and blasts out the window. Landing on the streets below, surrounded by fire, he remarks that this is going to be fun, and strides off into the city.